Good afternoon. Today what we're going to talk about is a little bit more about analysis and how it can be included into your CCOT essay, otherwise known as the Change in Continuity Over Time essay. However, I'm going to refer to it as the CCOT essay from here on out. To make this presentation the most useful to you, please listen to the lecture. Please also read the information that is on the slides because it is different than the lecture. Take notes as you go, press pause, rewind, and rewatch the video as necessary. We're going to use the 2007 revised CCOT essay question. This question is the actual question that students who took the test in 2007 had to answer. However, the College Board has slightly modified it to make it a better question for current students and teachers to use as a discussion point. As you can see in the question, you do have a choice as to which region you'd like to discuss. For our purposes, I'm going to pick Sub-Saharan Africa. Analysis is the fifth component of the basic core on the CCOT essay rubric, which means that it is explicitly being looked for by the people who grade the essay. If you don't include analysis, then you have no chance of earning any expanded core points, no matter how sophisticated your thesis statement is. So please attempt analysis in your essay. You'll need to pick one of the subcategories used to craft your thesis to analyze. This can be a change or a continuity. It should simply be the one that you have the most information about. For this essay, I could look at political laws, types of businesses within the economic sector, religious teachings and their influence, social classes, artistic pursuits such as art, literature, and music, and how the environment shaped the political movements. Based on the question, the time frame for this question would be from 1914 to 2015. For this example, I would break the larger time period down into the following smaller time periods. Early time period, from World War I to World War II, roughly 1914 to 1945. The middle time period, from World War II to 1970, roughly 1945 to 1980, and the latter time period from 1970 to the 21st century, roughly 1965 to 2015. I purposely have put an overlap between the middle time period and the later time period because some of the Persian chart themes took longer to develop in the middle time period and others started sooner in the later time period. If I'm looking at the subcategory of political laws, I'd want to look at what were the laws like in the early time period with examples, such as the Pre-Apartheid Native Affairs Act. What were the laws like in the middle time period with specific examples such as the Apartheid Pass laws? And what were the laws like in the later time period with specific historic examples such as the post-apartheid universal suffrage laws? There are keywords that I want to use. When talking about the laws and how they would have changed from the early time period to the second time period, I would say the laws changed from the pre-apartheid era to the apartheid era because the minority white population looked to increase their control over the majority population through further legislation. And if I'm continuing this conversation about how laws changed from the middle time period to the later time period, I'd say these apartheid laws that increased to the control of the white minority over the black minority led to the eventual post-apartheid laws of universal suffrage that facilitated a more equitable distribution of control so that no group could again legislate their ability to have control over another group. Please use as many of these keywords and phrases when writing your analysis as possible. There are a lot of different ways that you can plan how to write your analysis in the CCOT essay. As a guide to help you plan out your analysis, you can use the link provided to see a chart that you can fill in. Please note that the link to the chart is a chart that was created by another teacher to be used to look at major events during the course of the whole school year. However, you can just cross out the dates and the time periods and use the chart as a general guide to plan your analysis for any CCOT essay from any time period. In the chart, as you're planning out your analysis, the first column is called theme. Don't just put the Persian category that you plan on talking about. Put the more specific Persian subcategory that you plan on talking about. So in the example that I've been using so far, my subcategory would be political laws. Continuing our discussion on how to plan your analysis for the CCOT essay, the second column says basic features at the beginning of the period. In order to show change in continuity, you do need to describe what this subcategory looked like at the beginning of the time period given to you to write your CCOT essay about. In the case of the example I've given you, I'd have to describe what the political laws looked like in the early time period right before World War I. Continuing our discussion further, in the column that says key continuities, what you're going to do here is in the top of that column, you are going to list continuities that lasted from the early time period throughout the middle time period and into the final time period. I'd consider laws that were from the middle time period that instituted minority rule and list those, as well as listing specific laws from the later time period that may have continued some form of minority rule. Then, in the same column, you're going to also list your key changes, but that's going to be in the bottom half of that column. For key changes, I did the same things that I did with continuities, only this time I take specific notes on the laws that were created during the middle period that didn't increase minority rule, and laws from the later time period that didn't create minority rule. When we get to the next column, it's called basic features at the end period. For the basic features at the end period, you'd want to describe how the subcategory looked after the dates provided in this question. For this example, I'd want to discuss what was the nature of the subcategory of political laws and how did they look in the post-apartheid era. As we get closer to finishing our analysis and planning for analysis, another column that we need to look at is reasons for change in continuities. In this column, you now have to describe the subcategory that you chose, what it looked like from the beginning of the time period and what it looked like at the end, but now you're making an explanation for why it changed. Or maybe you're writing an explanation for why it stayed the same. Come up with a thoughtful explanation as to what would have created that change over time or what would have created that continuity over time. Now that you've completely finished your chart, your goal is to write a minimum of 2 sentences of analysis. You should shoot to have at least 2. However, please try to force yourself to have 3 or maybe 4 sentences of analysis. Remember, you are analyzing one change or one continuity of one of your subcategories. These subcategories would have been included in your thesis, and you're picking one of them, the one that you have the most information about, the one that you have the most specific information about, and the one that you understand the best. How you would choose which one of those it is, you would use this chart 6 times over, planning out your analysis. I hope this helps. If you have any further questions, please stop by before school, after school, or during lunch for further conversation. Thank you.